You once said anything you can think of has been thought of and tried. The only way you're going to find something is if you stick to it at an irrational level and try a whole bunch of things. This kind of makes an idea a commodity, but the judgment and execution incredibly rare. How do you evaluate if someone is picking the right idea and if they have the capacity to execute on that idea?
The best founders I found are the ones who are very long-term thinkers. So even decisions that maybe they shouldn't care that much about early on, they fixate on because they are not building a house. They're putting bricks in the foundation of a skyscraper, at least in their minds. And so what you're looking for is looking for someone who knows the space well, who understands how difficult it's going to be, but doesn't care because they just love whatever they're doing. They're into it, and they commit to it for the long haul. So, passion and vision alone are not enough. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think Steve Case said that vision without execution is a hallucination. Execution alone isn't enough. And then, unfortunately, at least in the technology business, there's a lot of luck required. Right place, right time, market forces, timing, regulatory action against or pro. So there's a lot of things that you control where the platforms are shifting, what open source efforts show up. So you can never predict the outside successes, but what you can predict are the failures. You can say, oh, this person doesn't know this field at all. They're way out of their depth. Or this person, they're a short-term thinker. They're not going to last the game. They're not going to go as far as needed. Because as I was saying, there are no new ideas. All the ideas have been thought of, but it's about the combination of the idea plus the execution plus the passion. Like Steve Jobs was a visionary and a great designer, not because he came with the idea to build a smartphone. Many people had tried to build a smartphone, but it's because he had a very high bar for the design. He understood the manufacturing tolerances and what the technology was capable and what it wasn't. He could rally the people and the resources to get it done. He actually didn't care about the financial outcome. He took $1 salary from Apple. He just wanted to see it done. And he was willing to do it for as long as it takes until it worked. So it's kind of this magic confluence of factors. And then the timing in the world happened to be right. The technology was around and Johnny I was there. And who knows how many other factors intersected to make it happen. But just as many factors intersected on his side, there were ones that intersected against him. For example, he had taken over Apple, which was a horribly failing company at the time. Poor guy died of pancreatic cancer, right? He got taken out early. Think about what more he could have created, what more he could have done for the world. He probably wasn't happy in the whole process. He drove himself to ruin. So I think you do have to be irrationally optimistic to succeed and passionate, but you also have to really know your stuff. And I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who are either short-term thinkers, in which case that's okay. It just means this is not the thing for you.
Right.
Go find the thing you can commit to for 10 years because that's how long it's going to take minimum to get a good outcome. And you have to enjoy the journey because there's no guarantee on the outcome. And you have to be really, really good at it, which means that you probably love it so much that you're willing to put in the time before there's even any return on it. So I think the best founders, they have a deep understanding of the space they're going into, enough to be contrarian, and they have a deep passion for it so that they'll just keep working on it. And they have execution skills. They just get things done. They solve problems. They're capable.
I love that. Yeah, I don't get to invest with angel founders, so I don't, but we all deal with people with similar, in business or life. If we're establishing a partnership, whether it's with a customer, a supplier, a relationship, we have similar concerns about their short-term thinking and will they take advantage of us and how should we go about entering that relationship and is this relationship fragile? I think that's a good way to think about it.
One thing I figured out kind of late is that generally, at least in the tech business in Silicon Valley, great people have great outcomes. You just have to
Mm,
be patient. Every person that I met at the beginning of my career 20 years ago, where I looked at it and said, wow, that guy or that gal is super capable. They're so smart and dedicated and blah, blah, blah. Now we'll just be friends or hang out or whatever. Kind of forgot about them. All of them, almost without exception, became extremely successful. You just had to give them a long enough time scale. It never happens in the time scale you want or they want, but it does happen.
I want to circle back and ask you a few more questions about life before we wrap up. You've kind of called your
Sure.
philosophy rational Buddhism. How does that differ from traditional Buddhism, and what type of exploration did you go through to arrive at that?
Yeah, the rational part means that I have to reconcile with science and evolution. And I have to reject all the pieces that I can't verify for myself. So, for example, is meditation good for you? Yes. Is clearing your mind a good thing? Yes. Is there a base layer of awareness kind of below your monkey mind? Yes. All of these things I've verified for myself. And some of the beliefs that come out of Buddhism, um, I believe and follow because, again, I've verified or reasoned with thought experiments there myself. But what I will not accept is things that are written down as just so. Like, oh, there's a past lives that you're paying off the karma for. Well, I haven't seen it. I don't remember any past lives. I don't have any memory. So I just have to not believe that. Or when people say, your third chakra is opening and your second chakra is, I don't know, that's just fancy nomenclature, right? I have not been able to verify or confirm any of that on my own. So if I can't verify it on my own, or if I cannot get there through science, then it may be true, it may be false, but it's not falsifiable. So I cannot view it as a fundamental truth. On the other side, I do know that evolution is true. I do know that we are, evolved survival and replication machines. I do know that we have an ego so that we get up off the ground and worms don't eat us and we actually take action. So what rational Buddhism to me means understanding the internal work that Buddhism espouses to make yourself happier and better off and more present and more in control of your emotions and being a better human being. But I don't subscribe to anything fanciful just because it was written down in a book. I don't think I can levitate. I don't think that meditation is going to give me superpowers and those kinds of things. So it's basically try everything, test it for yourself, be skeptical, keep what's useful and discard what's not. So I would say my philosophy falls down to on one pole is evolution as a binding principle because it explains so much about humans. And on the other side is Buddhism, which is the oldest, most time-tested spiritual philosophy on the internal state of being inside each of us. And I think those are absolutely reconcilable. I actually want to write a blog post at some point about how you can map the tenets of Buddhism, especially the non-fanciful ones, directly into a virtual reality simulation. What I mean by that is if you believe we're living in a VR sim, which I know some people are espousing, or if you believe the Buddhist view of the world with samsara and nirvana and all that, you would actually come to the same conclusions on how to live your life.
What are the areas of your life right now that you'd like to change the most and why?
I would like to be less. I'd like to be less time bound. I'd like to be less greedy about signing up for things. I don't know how to describe this. You know what it really is? I had a tweet recently where I was going back and forth with somebody, and then came up with this concept of there should be a two-factor authentication on your calendar.
Oh,
Right? We have
yes.
two-factor
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So there's two-factor authentication when you're logging into a website so that if your password gets stolen, the thief or hacker doesn't have your phone, so they can't log in because the phone has to generate a unique code. Well, I wish there was a two-factor code against my calendar because current me, present me, is always making promises for future me. Current me is tired, exhausted, hungry, wants to go home, wants to go to sleep, wants to read a book, wants to hang out with the wife and baby. But future me is this dynamic, high energy individual who will always show up to every meeting and will have a lot of energy and will want to get a lot of things done. So I commit myself to all these commitments in the future that when the future me arrives, it's actually this present me. It's back to being
Yes.
lazy and hungry and tired. So I want a two-factor against myself. And the way I would like to do that is I think every time I make a commitment to anything, I should instead just write it down
Yeah.
and then check back in 48 hours later and then clear mind say, do I commit to doing this? Or even better would be saying, if I commit to doing something, then I commit to doing it right now.
Yeah, I think
If I'm
that's
not willing to do it
that's
right now, then don't do it. Don't commit to it.
yeah, that's the Derek Sivers approach, right? Like if you're not saying hell yes right now, then you should just be saying no, I think.
Yeah, so I think this is something of every busy person. I just want to be much better at managing my own time because you go through life through an exploration phase and then you switch to an exploitation phase. And I'm very much in the exploitation phase. I'm not looking for more exploration. But that all that said, I have a hard time saying no. If I had one wish, the most important thing to me would be I would constantly be running my mind in debug mode. I would literally be watching every single thought I have and letting no reaction pass without it
Mm.
being stopped, inspected, stripped, searched, examined, understood, and then let go. But the reality is that takes a lot of time, and we're just highly conditioned creatures. So I do view a lot of my goals over the next few years of unconditioning previous learned responses or habituated responses, so that I can make decisions more cleanly in the moment without relying upon memory or prepackaged heuristics and judgments.
What's the most common mistake you see people make over and over?
I think the most common, I mean, this is a very tough question because it's so contextual, right? It really depends on the context. I think the most common mistake, if I look at out there on planet Earth, like for humanity, is the idea or the belief that you're going to be made happy because of some external circumstance. And I know that's not original, that's not new, that's fundamental Buddhist wisdom. So I'm not taking credit for it, but I think I really just recognize it as a fundamental level, including in myself. Like we just bought a new car, we have a baby, so we need a safer car. We were driving a little Mini Cooper before, not enough room in there. So we bought a new car, and now I'm waiting for the new car to arrive. And of course, every night I'm on the forums reading about the car. Why am I doing that? It's a silly object, it's a silly car. It's not going to change my life that much or at all. And I know that the instant the car arrives, I won't care about it anymore.
Yeah.
But what it is I'm addicted to the desiring. I'm addicted to the idea that this external thing is going to bring me some kind of happiness and joy, and that's just completely delusional. So I think just looking outside for anything, I think is the fundamental delusion. Which is not to say you shouldn't do things in the outside. You absolutely should. You're a living creature. You know there are things that you do. You locally reverse entropy. That's why you're here. You're meant to do something. You're not just meant to lie there in the sand and meditate all day long. So you should self-actualize and you should do what you're meant to do. But the idea that you're going to change something in the outside world and that is going to bring you the peace and everlasting joy and the happiness that you deserve, that is a fundamental delusion that we all suffer from, including me. And so the mistake over and over and over is to say, oh, I'll be happy when I get that thing, whatever that is. That's the fundamental mistake that we all make, including me, 24/7, all day long.